What's up, YouTube? It is Rodney from the Young Zing. Today was my second top 10 video, this time talking about the January/February 2016 Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG format. Wow, that was a lot. But yes, my second top 10 list, looking at the best decks for next format. The main of the format I'm looking at is the period after the Monarch structure deck. I know Break the Shadow is a really big deal. That's absolutely undeniable. One of the greatest sets to ever be printed here in the TCG. However, the Monarch structure deck is still like pretty. It's important. It's gonna have an impact. It's not completely game changing, but it's gonna have an impact. So I had to make sure I factored them as well. Wing Raiders is the next major release after those. It's really not that big of a deal to me. Like some cool, neat reprints, I guess is the best thing that's come out there. Rare Raptor is not that great. And plus, once you get more into February, we're gonna get into banless season. So it's very likely everything's just going to change due to a new list dropping us any day. Where's my end date, Konami? And I guess the last thing I want to say before we head in, you already know what number one is. I already know what number one is. We're not gonna dance around it. We all know what number one is. I can't really say until the end, but yeah. But there's still 9 other slots to fill, so this is still kind of an important thing to go over. So without further ado, let's go over the top 10 best decks for the January/February 2016 format. Rocking in at number 10 is PSY-Frame, a return from the old list. PSY-Frame, when I say you're number 10, I mean like you're the best out of all the rogue decks. That's what number 10 means to me, okay? It's to the point where like out of all like some of the obscure decks out there, you're okay. You're fine. Overload is still pretty good. Omega is still pretty good. Those cards are pretty good. It's just that the deck's like stun capability is not nearly as good as some other decks, like really just like cater decks to kill the very top decks. This deck really needs to its engine isn't terribly flexible, like because you have to have no monsters, you can't really run like that many engines alongside of it. But I mean, Overload is a card's pretty good, so I don't know. Number 10. It's not as aggressive as it really needs to be to move up on the list. So yeah, my bad. PSY-Frame 10. Too bad. So sorry. Number 9, Satellarknight. So Satellarknight is still pretty consistent. They got some neat new toys out of Break the Shadow. Toy Twister, Solemn Nose, Cyber Dragon Infinity, Trapsix Shuffle. That's pretty much it. But a lot of other decks benefit off of those pretty powerful cards. Why Satellarknight benefit more? They've always been sort of like a rank 4 control deck. I guess like Rafflesia is pretty big for them. Solemn Strike, Solemn Notice, same thing. Yeah, that's also another. Those are 2 other cards that are pretty big for the Satellarknight. It's gonna help them. It's gonna help boost them up. They're extra got new toys. They're gonna be able to more some help beat their abysmal. Oh, their terrible pendulum matchup. They're gonna need anti-spell in order to continue. So Satellarknight players, get your anti-spells. There's no reason why you shouldn't. If you're not mating 3 side 3, you're gonna really need to beat pendulums. But yeah, number 9 for Satellarknight. No, it's not aggressive enough to be any higher. All right. Moving on to number 8, we have the Magispectre, a deck that probably fell the most out of this entire list. The Magispectre, the problem with them, and something that I probably should have realized more ahead of time, is that they have some big consistency issues. Unicorn is a powerful card. Alright, Unicorn's really, really nuts. It's pretty good against everything that isn't number 1. It's still pretty good against the number 1 deck. But it's probably like it's probably this deck's like biggest weapon outside of Tempest. Its new support that it got is pretty. It's okay. They got the frog that lets them directly set from the deck a Magispectre spell traps. That means now they have another searcher that searches spells and traps. Not just spells or traps. Because the fox searches just traps and the crow searches just spells. So that's kind of annoying, but now you have a guy who searches both, so that's going to give the deck some, they're going to help their consistency issues, but I mean, Magispectre, dude, it sucks using Magispectre cards to scale. You have to use the Magician engine alongside of it, and I know they have their own Solemn Notice, but like everyone else can just like run Solemn Notice too, so again, the deck's biggest problem is just their lack of aggression. So Magispectre, only number 8, so sad, I know, terrible, little furries. All right, number 7, moving on to the Elemental Hero deck. The biggest reason, Darklaw is good. Obviously, we all know that. The biggest reason why I think Hero is pretty good is because of this guy. Oh yeah, Cyber Dragon Infinity. A big trend in the OSG was running this guy along with Darklaw just all day. A Darklaw Infinity board is so hard to beat, even if you're playing Pepe. Like, Pepe can still break it. It's really really annoying. Because Darklaw prohibits you. Sorry, he discourages you from searching. It banishes all your stuff, and Seven Dragon Infinity is going to negate anything that would be potentially breaking your board. They can still be running other cards that can stun Pepe. Solemn Strike is pretty good. They can't run anti-spell. They do need their spells. If they can cater their deck to beat the number 2 deck, the number 3 deck, which I think is going to be the biggest threat to them, they can probably figure it out. But number 7 for the hero deck and, Infinity and all. Number 6, Yang Zing. Why Yang Zing? Because, dude, floodgates are powerful. Who knew? Yeah. Definitely. Probably the pure Yang Zing. I don't think Zephyr Yang Zing is going to be that great next format. Not only because Wavering Eyes is this thing, which is still kind of a cancerous thing. The biggest thing that the Zephyr Yang Zing build isn't able to abuse as many floodgates. The regular Yang Zing use cards like Lose One Turn, Anti-Spell is like particularly important, Skill Drain, Mistake, you name it. The biggest ones probably that being Lose One Turn and Mistake and Anti-Spell. Anti-Spell probably like the biggest wall. That's what the deck really needs to beat the number 1 and just all those really annoying pendulum decks that kind of steamroll over. Yang Zing's, it's pretty consistent. It's probably one of the better trap decks out there. There's a few more as we move up the list. What's the problem with Yang Zing? Dweller's a powerful card. And some of the best decks in this game can make rank 4s really easy, especially the number 1s like. Yang Zing it can't really go much higher than your spell traps can only do so well, and Twin Twister being a thing hurts this deck a lot. Twin Twister is arguably the best card that came out of Breakers of Shadow. Listen, Peasant Sorcerer is really really good, but Twin Twister is so unbelievably insane. I don't know, it's just kind of the way it is, but yeah, Yang Zing number 6. Number 5, Monarch deck. The new Monarch deck, because when I say Monarch, there's a little bit of an asterisk there. I don't mean like the Frog Monarch from way back when. I mean like the deck is new. This is not the same deck. Yeah, I use some of the old cards, but this is just like, it just rehashes some of the old Monarch decks, old Monarch cards, but it really just focuses on a lot of new ones. Here's the thing about Monarchs. Monarchs is they have this. I don't know if it's a disease, but I guess one of the things about them is that it's like 2 or 3 really, really powerful and broken cards. Mainly, I guess, Idea/Iados, Pandeity, and Erebus. Dominion, so that's like 4. All of those cards are really insane. Probably just Pandeity, Erebus, Dominion, Idea, and Eidos, they're okay. Those cards are absolutely insane. But that's all the deck has really to hold itself together is those 3. Why are Monarchs so high on this list? Solely because of Dominion. I really think Monarchs is a bad deck because they do die to disruption, and especially hand traps like Effect Veiler. If you Effect Veiler Idea, they're like, oh, pass. There's not really much else they can do if you Effect Veiler that. But the fact that Dominion is a card, it's such a versatile. It's such a versatile stun card that's so easy to search out. Like a lot of other decks have some pretty good stun cards on this list, but a lot of them you have to hard draw. Monarch is the only deck that can really search out so easily through like Tenacity. You can draw it out Pandeity, Terraforming, even though they don't need that because Tenacity is a card. It's pretty insane. But Monarch 5, it's too vulnerable to disruption for it to be any higher. That's kind of what I think about it. Number 4, Atlantean Mermail. This is probably... I still feel like this is one of the most underhyped decks that came out of Breakers of Shadow. I don't think people realize how good Neptibus is. Neptibus is dumb. It's like a +2 on summon. The thing about this deck, though, it's obviously not as strong as the number 1, which I keep dancing around the name. It's got to be somewhat of a surprise if you've been living under a rock or something. I've been facing this deck a lot on DN actually. This deck's, I think it went under the radar before Bosch, but now that Bosch has dropped, a lot of people are playing this deck on DN and at tournaments, which is good. I think this deck is solid. This deck will kill you when you're not watching. What's the problem with this deck? It does die to disruption as well. It can't run any traps. It has like the Mermail syndrome where all your cards in your deck have to be catered toward comboing. So if they disrupt your combo, you die, and you can't really play defense in this deck. So you just kind of die to decks that OTK. So it's either you kill advantage or they kill you. There's no really in between. So it's the way it is for them. Still pretty solid. The deck's really consistent. It sucks that Deep Sea Diva's at 1, but the deck's still versatile. It'd be a lot better though if Debo was at multiples. Who knows? That might happen soon. Number 3 goes to everyone's favorite TCG exclusive archetype, the Kozmo deck. I admit, I was slightly wrong about this deck. This deck's actually pretty solid this format, for 2 main reasons. 3. First, Dark Destroyer is still really, really good. A non-targetable 3,000 beater that pops a monster on summon. It lets you facilitate OTKs by popping some of your other ships. That's pretty good. Another thing, Kozmojo. Kozmojo is a pretty good stun card that they're seeming to max out on. Some decks are. It's a pretty good stun card that lets them get rid of cards that are problematic for them. You can Kozmojo pop one of their scales. Sorry, Kozmojo banish one of their scales, and then if you kill one of your ships, you can summon Slip Rider from the deck and pop the other scales. So that way, I guess they have a way to kill both scales now, which is a pretty big weapon that they're going to need against Pendulum deck. The thing about Kozmo is they're really good against the number 2 deck, and they're good against the vast majority of decks on this list. They just suck against the number 1 deck because Ignitor Providence is that's a pretty strong card. All right, this guy says no to the non-targetable aspects of Kozmo. Another thing I think that's big at Kozmo is Kozmo Tin Can. I was actually not fully aware of how good Tin Can is. Tin Can, not only, now you have a searcher that doesn't have to interact with your opponent. With Farm Girl, when you had to inflict damage, which kind of sucked, means that you couldn't search first turn, and you actually had to, you had to hit with damage. You had to run cards like Honest, which didn't have much utility outside of Farm Girl. Tin Can gives the deck a first turn play, and it fills up their graveyard, so that way even if they don't search the cards that they want, they can Call the Haunted it back. So now they can play really good cards like Call the Haunted that they weren't able to play previously because all their stuff would be banished. So the access to the graveyard is a pretty big thing for this deck. And this deck actually has a lot going for it. It's just, its matchup against the number 1 deck is kind of rough, but a solid number 3 nonetheless. Again, if it gets a card like Kozmo Dark Eclipser but for spells in the next set, this deck is actually really, really legitimate. So we'll just have to see what happens there. Number 2, Burning Abyss. I've been saying for a while that I think Burning Abyss is the second best deck, and a lot of people have been switching this deck into Kozmo. The problem with Kozmo is that they just can't handle Pepe. Pepe is just too fast, too furious. 3 fast, 3 furious for them. They just can't handle it. Burning Abyss dies to Kozmo every time. Absolutely every time. It is the most impossible match to win in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, is Burning Abyss versus Kozmo. Because Dark Destroyer is so easy to summon, and it can't be targeted, and 400 can't be targeted, and once you start dropping multiples of those, it just gets really annoying. Kozmojo, they can banish your only graph, or they can out-utopia feature now with Kozmojo. So annoying. But this deck destroys Pepe when it gets going, because they can run some of the nastiest trap cards out there. Horn of Heaven, Solemn Strike, Anti-Spell Fragrance, among other things. I got a huge boost with Fiendish Rhino Warrior. I think you guys realize how good Fiendish Rhino Warrior is. When he sends to the graveyard, he just turns himself into any BA. So it doesn't matter that Graph's at 1, because if you mill Rhino Warrior, you can just send Graph. So now you can essentially, first turn, if you don't draw Rhino Warrior, you run 4 Graphs that you can mill off Dante. Or if you already have your Graph in play, you can send a Seer. So you have 5 copies of Seer in your deck. It's really, really insane. A problem with Burning Abyss, they suck with dealing with established fields. They suck against Kozmo, which is the number 3 deck. But their very, very, very good Pepe matchup is keeping them in line here. They're an anti-meta deck. You can't really get around that fact. They have to run all the hate if they have any hope of surviving. But their chances of surviving are pretty good. This deck's pretty insane for having the hits that it does. Just imagine when it gets Beatrice, this deck will definitely scour more. But only number 2 for Burning Mist. And the number 1 deck of the January/February 2016 format is the Performer deck. Performapal, Performagent Pal, Enter Mage, I don't care what you call it. It's a Performer deck. That's just what I call it, because every time you play it, you get outperformed, and they all have party hats, so they just perform all day or something. Yeah, so the deck that outperforms you. We all know why this deck is good. This deck's insane. It's arguably better than full power Dragon Rulers. There's this concept in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where a deck has a high ceiling, meaning that it can do a lot of things. Given a bunch of pieces, they can do virtually anything. Meaning that they have outs to pretty much every situation, and this guys really do. Anti-Spell is very, very good against them, but they can out it. It's rank fours. Yeah, rank fours are good. They cards like Hat Tricker. Some of them are still playing the Gem Knight version where they some Seraphonite. That way, you can do a double normal summon. So in case they stop your first succeeds, you can do double normal summon using Seraphonite to make another guy. This deck is super consistent. Consistency is like a gross understatement. This deck is much more consistent than Necroz. It just runs a monkey board. It's a 1-card scale. Pendulum Sorcerer. If it resolves, your opponent loses. Gee Turtle is free draws. Lizard Draw comes with Gee Turtle, really dumb. Luster Pendulum is really good. Plus Fire, when it's popped off, Luster Pendulum is really good. The fact that Solemn Strike and Twin Twister are cards, like, yeah, it hurts this deck some, but like Twin Twister kind of helps them because it lets them out anti-spell. Because if your opponent activates anti-spell during your summer phase and you chain Twin Twister, you win. It's so over at that point. Is the Ariadne build the best? I can't really say for sure. I kind of doubt it though, because the problem with Ariadne, it's really hard to trigger Ariadne more than once per turn. It's kind of rough. You can pop with Luster Pendulum, that's kind of it. But you have to open like really broken if you want to outperform your opponent with searching Solemn Notices. But it's usually just more consistent to not run Ariadne because she kind of doesn't do anything unless she gets popped. And just summon Rafflesia. Rafflesia is so dumb, and Cyber Dragon Infinity, which is also really easy to make. I think Rafflesia is better than Infinity, but that's why not just make both? This deck can easily make both. This deck has access to every rank 4 under the sun. Ignister Province out any dumb thing. This deck is just absolutely insane. So let me know what you guys think of this top 10 list. It's kind of like it's just my thoughts. We'll see this unfold more once the Monarch structure deck officially releases. We'll see more once. We already seen some events drop early indications of where it's heading in this format, so I'll keep my eye on that and go over tournament coverage whenever it's applicable, since that's my thing. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you all next time.